the idea that the name that you make money with, the name that you use to put food on your table, the name that you report to the government with, the name that your friends and family call you, that these all have to be the same thing isn't true. And in the same way that lots of businesses, have a fictive corporate identity, pseudonymity allows the individual to have basically that same power, where it's like you get this remove that allows you to be yourself and to be a little bit more honest, but then also not like taint one side of life with the other.
All right, what's going on, everybody? This is the Other Life Podcast. You know me, I am Justin Murphy. This week, we are talking with Indian Bronson. So Indian Bronson, I guess I'll call him Bronson. Sounds weird to call him Indian. He's a pseudonymous internet personality. He writes a Substack newsletter. He's very active on Twitter. He's also interested in Urbit and active on Urbit. And he self-describes as a kind of Indian tech bro. And he sometimes claims to be Naval Ravikant or Balaji Srinivasan. I don't believe he's either of those people. But he's developed an interesting theory of decentralization and pseudonymity, and that's the focus of this conversation. He himself practices pseudonymity, but most interestingly, from my perspective, he's kind of moving and shaking maybe a bit more than your average anonymous avatar. He is part of a startup right now called Swype, and Swype is building out this pseudonymous layer. So Indian Bronson has been hired by a company, basically. He's working for a startup with a startup, and he's maintained his pseudonymity. So no one at the company needs to know who he really is. And this is very striking to me. This is very fascinating. He's very bullish on this becoming more popular. And the company Swype is actually working to build out the infrastructure for mainstreaming this kind of pseudonymous buying and selling and hiring. So he has some really interesting ideas on just the role of pseudonymity and decentralization today and what's coming in the near future. So we spend most of the conversation just unpacking his theories of that. So if you're interested, definitely go check out his Substack, indianbronson.substack.com. And he's on Twitter as Indian_Bronson. If you're curious why his pseudonym refers to Bronson, he actually has a very sophisticated answer to that, which we go into. So yeah, reach out to him if you're interested. He's a cool dude. And yeah, I really enjoyed this. I hope you do too. That's all I got for now. Over and out. All right, Indian Bronson, you are a Substack author, a Twitter shit poster, a self-described Indian tech bro. But for the audience out there listening, just tell us, without doxing yourself, obviously you're a pseudonymous figure. That's something we're going to talk about a lot today. Without doxing yourself, just tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background and any relevant details about, your perspective, attitude, persona, lifestyle that it kind of informs our conversation today.
Yeah. So, I go for Indian tech bro, just because, for most people, that's a very familiar anchor point. It's accurate. I've been a shit poster for years. That is also accurate. And it's the pseudonymous thing. It's if you're posting strange things on the internet, whether it's just for fun or whether it's because you have ideas about politics or ideas about culture, doing it with your real name and your real face is not always so well advised. Even if you're not saying anything that's really wrong, or even if you're not saying anything that's like too taboo, people are weird. They can be pretty nasty. And, there's also a bit of self-censorship that you avoid by being pseudonymous. You're kind of off the reservation once you're pseudonymous. And so you can say what you really think, maybe not without consequence, but with more honesty, I guess, than you might get if you were just talking to a room full of strangers or something.
All right. So why don't you just start to unpack for us your theory of pseudonymity and decentralization? You've written about this a lot, and I think you have a fairly first principles perspective on the role of decentralization, the near future of decentralization, and what's coming down the pike here. How do you think about decentralization?
Yeah, so I have a couple essays on this on my Substack, and there are more coming soon. But like it's all under the heading of like just sort of exit over voice, right? You have this paradigm of exit voice loyalty, and exit can take a bunch of different forms, but the crucial thing is that it's a lot easier to leave and build something new, rather than to try and fix something that's just like massively broken. It's a lot easier to start over. It's a lot easier to exit, right? And you know, many of the political fights that we have in the U.S., a lot of the contours of the so-called culture wars and this and that. There's we talk about like cancel culture now, right? As though it's like a new thing, but people getting mad at other people and trying to exclude them from life, it's not like a super new thing, right? Like this is how people operate. There was a wonderful study done some years back, I think with gorillas, or it might have been a different primate, where one group was raised to eat blue dyed corn, and they were also given vats of pink dyed corn, but there's some irritant, some chemical put in the pink dyed corn that would make it taste awful, and just be upset their stomachs, make them vomit, whatever. And over time, they taught their young to only eat the corn that was dyed blue, and they taught a different group of monkeys how to eat only pink corn, and not corn that was blue. And then they basically just mixed the groups up. And you had people from, pink corn culture and blue corn culture now suddenly in new groups. And, they would transgress the taboo. They would be like, well, I'm just going to, I'm going to try and eat this pink corn. Even without the chemical, they were suddenly violating like a group taboo. It's like, what are you doing? Don't do this, And these are monkeys, right? They don't have language. They can't really communicate anything. So they just, they get irascible or whatever. A fun thing that was noticed is that higher status males from an outgroup, they just sort of stuck to the corn that they knew, you know. But other monkeys, they're a little bit more pliant. They assimilated into the culture. So, these fights that people have over institutions, over policy, these are just part of our tribal, primal nature, and it's not going away. So when it comes to trying to reform institutions, which are these big, webs of hierarchies and incentives that are, nigh impenetrable as an outsider, sometimes the best thing to do is really just get away from them. And it's pretty easy to cancel someone by their real name. It's a lot harder to cancel a pseudonym. It's not impossible. Obviously there's the whole doxing thing, but the idea that the name that you make money with, the name that you use to put food on your table, the name that you report to the government with, the name that your friends and family call you, that these all have to be the same thing, isn't true. And in the same way that, lots of people, lots of businesses, have a doing business as name, or they have, like kind of a fictive corporate identity. Pseudonymity allows the individual to have basically that same power, where it's like, to my friends and family, I'm Naval Ravikant, but to everyone else on the internet, I'm Indian Bronson, right? And so you get this remove that allows you to be yourself and to be a little bit more honest, but then also not like taint one side of life with the other.
Totally. Okay. So I believe you also have some interesting angles here on how differences between generational cohorts will feed into decentralization and pseudonymization dynamics. Could you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this is a huge topic. So this came up. I was talking to the indomitable Alex Kashuda about some things that I've noticed in the sexual politics between millennials and Zoomers. Millennials were kind of raised in a way that was aspirational for boomers, for our kind of boomer cohort parents, that they themselves didn't necessarily partake in. College participation rates for boomers and millennials. Millennials are some of the most college educated Americans there are. Relocation to a new city for a new job, that's a very millennial thing. Job hopping, also a very millennial thing. These frequent dislocations in life that were sort of put upon millennials, they don't really work that well for a stable life history. They don't really serve people that well, but they're kind of what you have to do in order to get along in a paradigm where everyone is doing this thing and it's an expectation. That's not going to be so true for the Zoomers. So, you know, a lot of us who are millennials, we grew up in a paradigm where, you know, you turn 18, you leave your friends and family, you leave your home community, you leave your church, everything. You just leave it all behind. You know, if you're lucky enough to be going to a religious institution, and then you go to college, and then for 4, maybe even 5 years, you're there in college, and then you leave again. You leave this place that you were, and you go work somewhere, and then, you know, maybe you have a new job and it sends you across the country or whatever. You've done this thing to your identity and the cohort of people that are around you, where you keep severing it, and you learn to not actually be super invested, and you have this sort of parasocial relationship with people with your own name. So like, you know, you think of these people as your friends, but they're really your coworkers, and you're not really being you around them. You're being work you. You're being this entity that shares your name, right? But it has to abide by all of these corporate rules. You know, you can have 2 drinks at happy hour, but don't go 2 over. But don't not go to happy hour though, because if you don't network, you know, you'll be left behind. You have this bizarre existence that you have to live with your own name. Meanwhile, you know, some of the people that you grew up with, you no longer even talk to, because you guys didn't go to college together. Um, this is a very, like, you know, just describing it, it's like, it's not good, right? Like, you know, people don't actually like living like this, but so many people have had to live like this. And, you know, not just remote work, not just pseudonymity, you know, not just you know, sort of kind of looking at the spiraling costs of college, but all of these things together is going to produce a very different life rhythm for Zoomers, I think, than millennials have had to suffer through. You know, and it's not going to involve like massive reform of college. It's not going to involve lots of laws being passed. People are just going to do something else. They're just going to leave that other paradigm behind. They're going to, you know, I mean, not to be too on the nose about it, they're going to exit, right? They're going to leave this behind and not deal with it anymore.
Right. Okay. Fascinating. And you also told me once that you think there will be a first stage of decentralization that will be centrifugal, followed by a second stage that is centripetal. Could you explain that?
Yeah, so I don't know if I used that terminology exactly. I'd offer this, you know, also maybe a very sciencey way of putting it, but I think pretty accurate. So when you nucleate a crystal, you know, there are a lot of ways of doing it. You know, everyone's well, maybe not everyone, but most people are familiar with like rock candy. You know, you have like the sugar syrup solution, you put like the string in it, and then, you know, the next day you have like dyed rock candy or whatever. So you can nucleate things on a surface like that, or on a material that's in a solution. There are also, you know, you can get nucleation just around you know, just around molecules of solute, right? Like, you know, if you put a lot of salt into, or sugar for that matter, put a lot of solute into some solution, you heat it up, and, you know, it's boiling, everything's dissolved easily. You know, when you cool it down, you can get crystals again. This is, you know, this happens with water to itself, right? But you can also get some very interesting things with something called epitaxy. So if you have a surface, if you have a surface that that presents the right surface energy to a solution, you can coax out different forms of a crystal from this sort of pre-nucleation aggregate. You can encourage the different formation of different, you know, we call them polymorphs of a crystal on the surface by altering the surface. And, you know, if you start out with crystals of one type, you can dissolve them, you can turn them into a liquid solution, you can get crystals of another type, or crystals of that same type again. Yeah, so you know, rather than think about this like kind of this tumult that we're in as like, you know, catastrophic or something, like really it's the opportunity for something new to arise. You can think of it as, dissolving one form of crystals, and now we have an opportunity to get another. And you don't have to have the entire structure. Crucially, you don't have to have the entire crystal lattice figured out. You really just need the surface conditions that are most favorable to them, and you will nucleate the crystals that you want in great proportion. Um, and that is kind of how I see the steps of decentralization. The first thing that happens is kind of like this chaotic spinning apart of older structures, and then the second thing that happens is like we have to create the kind of the epitaxial surface. We have to create the most favorable surface for a new structure that we want. Not the whole thing, but it should be like a ready-made platform for them. And then the crystal kind of self-assembles. A lot of what people do isn't really so much ideologically driven as it is like structurally driven. A lot of the things that we think of as choices are really it's really just a matter of the options that are available to us, that are comprehensible to us, not really things that we decided to do. And it's kind of weird because it's like, how much free will do we really exert over the world? This life script that we follow, how much of it is suggested to us, how much of it is propagandized to us. But it is also a little bit exciting because it's like, if we're doing something that isn't working out, and we want to change it, we might not need to just like, we might not need to have an ideological conversation with everyone where we convince their highly evolved forebrain of like every last rational reason they should be doing something. We might just be able to offer a better way, and people can look at it and be like, yeah, I want that, and they just sort of glom onto it because of that, rather than working out a roadmap of how they rearrange their life from one way to another.
So I want to unpack a little bit about how your theoretical perspective informs how you evaluate different types of technological projects, whether you think certain projects are winners that you want to align yourself with and throw your weight behind versus maybe some theses on decentralization that you find less promising, some technological applications that you think might fail. But before we get to how your theoretical perspective informs your evaluation of different technological projects, I want to just pause on your own pseudonym. It's clearly a reference to the famous Charles Bronson. I'm curious to learn more about, what was the lesson that you took from the life of Charles Bronson?
Yeah. So if you ask your boomer parents about Charles Bronson, they'll fondly recall the Death Wish movies, or the Dirty Dozen. At least mine would. Yeah. So Charles Bronson, American actor, Lithuanian in origin, but he wasn't exactly Lithuanian. Part of his ancestry was from a group of people called the Lipka Tatars. And so everyone is kind of familiar with the Volga Tatars, or at least they've heard of them. The Lipka Tatars are a related group of people, and they settled into the Polish Lithuanian duchy as these kind of migrant cattlemen. Maybe not exactly cowboys, but something similar, and they really integrated into the polity. They learned Polish. They lived alongside people. They had their own communities, but they were part of the greater fabric of this republic, which was already a multi-ethnic republic. And when the Ottomans invade, or encroaching onto Europe, these people have a weird kind of choice now, because it's like, look, we're a Turkic Muslim people. They're a Turkic Muslim people. They're actually mutually intelligible. They can speak to these people, and so they're faced with the choice, which is like, do we side with the people that have taken us in, or do we side with our sort of our co-ethnics, you could say, and they fight on the side of the duchy. They repel the invaders, and like a lot of stuff in the European cavalry tradition of like winged hussars and curved sabers and stuff. That comes from them. Um, and they're still understood as like part of the foundation of the modern nation of Poland and its survival into the modern era. And when I first learned about them, I was like, this is what civic nationalism is. Civic nationalism is kind of like a para-ethnic nationalism. It's very normal if you're Polish to be a Polish nationalist, right? Because it's like that, you're Polish and you're in Poland. If you're not Polish, what are the things that make you a Polish nationalist? Basically, it's that you live among Poles, right? And the Poles were nice to you. There's another, I thought about using this for a name, and then I was like, people don't really watch The Godfather, so I chose the much more well-known and less obscure Lipka Tatars. Tom in the Godfather movies, he's not Sicilian. He's the childhood friend of the Godfather's children, and so he's very close to them, is very attached to the family, but he himself is not Sicilian. And yet through it all, even in contrast to Fredo, who, famously goes against the family and breaks Michael Corleone's heart and, this and that and all the other things, Tom never does that. Tom is always loyal to not his own family, because he didn't have his own family, but to the family that took him in, right? And he, even though he can't really be part of the mafia because he's, again, he's not Sicilian, as consigliere, as their attorney, essentially, he can operate with the broader world in a way that's helpful to them, in a way that they could never, right? He's got the waspy good looks. He can talk the talk. No one suspects him because he's not part of the Sicilian family, and yet he is part of the Sicilian family, right? And so he gives them this capability while not undermining them. I think in the books, he actually even speaks Sicilian fluently or something. So yeah, it's this kind of like, a lot of people come to nationalism in sort of like about an idealistic way, but for me, it's really about a nation. It's about a biological people. It's about your friends and family. It's people you grew up with. And so I'm always looking at technological progress and national changes and things like that in the lens of like, is this going to be good for the people that I grew up with? Is there a way for them to succeed in this new world that's coming? Will this help them? Will this hurt them? And a lot of stuff in crypto, a lot of stuff in tech. Like it's very, there's the joke of being a bug man. It's just like, sipping Huel, vaping, electric scootering around, some city or whatever. It's all, it's very silly, but like, a lot of this stuff, it offers avenues for living a life and being well remunerated and having a family and owning a home and all of this stuff that like really I want the people that I grew up with to take full advantage of. And
who are the people you grew up with?
So I grew up in rural PA. So I grew up in a town of like 2,000 people. I
like
went
small town America.
I grew up in small town America. We had 3 traffic lights near my house when I was growing up, and now we have 4. So it's
and so since you're of Indian ethnicity, but you're an American, and I guess you, Indian Bronson, are to American culture what Tom is to the Sicilian mafiosos. Is that right?
Yeah, I get. Yeah, not to cast any aspersions, obviously, but yeah, it's like if I'm not really part of this nation, right? I worship Indra. I don't eat meat. I pray in Sanskrit. Those belong to a national people. It's just not an American one, right? But like, but I also don't really, I can't really relate that well to Indians.
I got you.
It's so it's like it's
right.
It's one of those things.
Right. So you're like a liminal character who's going to kind of have the ability to show America what America kind of what America can't see about itself. It's like you can be in a way even more American than Americans from a certain angle.
Well, let's not get too crazy. Yeah, but like, it's one of those things where if you're an outsider in some sense, you can appreciate a lot of stuff that people take for granted.
Right. Well, I take you as someone who very much loves the American spirit and is trying to kind of follow through on the American spirit. And I agree that it's actually, people of diverse ethnicities that often are most able to kind of take up that mantle. A lot of complacent kind of white Americans have totally lost touch of what like the American spirit really is. So I totally appreciate that. So I want to think with you a little bit more about how your theories of decentralization and pseudonymity inform the near future. Like there are many projects right now to try to quote unquote decentralize things. And, some of them might win, some of them might lose. And I'm just kind of curious how your theories cash out into, particular concrete heuristics. How do you evaluate new technological projects when there's a new company trying to do something? What are you looking for? What kinds of characteristics or principles are you looking for where you're like, oh, this is going to be a winner, or oh, this one's going to fail? You mentioned before a kind of the concept of a kind of epitaxial surface. Like, what does that look like concretely? What are you evaluating for?
Yeah, so you can imagine like a perfectly centralized structure that just totally dominates you in every way. Where like, if you upset this entity, your life is just over, right? Kind of like the relationship that the relationship that a captive would have to their captor, right? So, you can imagine your entire life's work, all of your communications, the contact information of everyone you care about, anything that is not physically committed to paper, all sorts of information just being owned in a single server somewhere. And if you ever say the wrong thing, it's just deleted immediately, or there's the ability to delete it immediately. A lot of people actually live like this. If you post a naughty comment on YouTube, or you make too many heterodox videos, when your YouTube account is suspended, your Gmail account goes with it. It's all the same. It's all the same thing. And Google will just basically be like, hey, go fuck yourself. And it's game over for you, right? If you didn't save all of that information, it's just gone. You can never get it back. And a lot of people don't realize how dependent they are on these services until they basically break. So like if you've ever changed like credit cards, like I had to do this recently. I updated my address, I changed my credit cards out, but I just forgot about stuff like Uber. I forgot about stuff like web hosting, and then suddenly all of these services were breaking for me. I was like, oh, payment method fail, and you realize how hampered your life is, just because this one link of like what you think is your ownership, what you think is your money, what you think is the thing that you paid for, it's all suddenly broken. And what it reveals is how dependent you are on the good graces, essentially, of these companies. So, you know, that's a structure of just like total centralization. What does it mean to decentralize from it? Well, if you're part of a decentralized thing, one of these entities going down shouldn't ruin your life, right? Like, or shouldn't interfere with how you live your life, right? And so some people do this on the level of like, I don't just have Uber, I also have Lyft. They have like they have like one set of fallbacks or whatever. They're like, I don't just have a Visa, I also have a MasterCard or something, right? That is decentralization of a sort, right? But then like the actual root service, you're still dependent on them for it. If you can get out of that, if you can be independent of them, right? You've decentralized away from the center. And so this is basically like having sovereignty. You want to have sovereignty over something. So if it's your information, you want to be the only person that owns that information. Maybe you can grant permissions, like read write permissions, just for the sake of just like API functionality. But like you want to actually own your own information. You want to actually own your own money. That is what I evaluate services on.
Gotcha.
So like I recently started at Swype. Swype is 100% non-custodial. It's your keys, your money. If you lose your keys, it's just game over, right? No one can recover it for you, and that's dangerous. But it's also like it's crucial. It's crucial that it actually be yours. If you lose if you lose your private keys to your Urbit, it's, hey man, you're kind of out of luck here. Whether or not you've hosted it somewhere else, that level of ownership where you can actually destroy something means that it's really yours.
Okay, great. So yeah, this was pretty interesting actually that you started working for this company called Swype. This is a startup that is building out this pseudonymous layer basically. And what was really interesting about that I noticed is that they've hired you with full respect toward your pseudonym. So as I understand it, you have been able to join this company and they don't know anything about your true identity. Is that right?
Yeah, so the founder and I are friends, but my coworkers, I'm pseudonymous to them. I'm Indian Bronson to them. A guy that I work with is called Nacho, and that's all I know about him. His name is Nacho. I can speculate. I think Nacho might be Ignacio, but who knows? I'm not out to dox anyone. It's freeing because you get to, this is a little bit like the methods by which you post on the internet. If you're just being you, with your coworkers, and you have this barrier of pseudonymity, you can really be you. You can really be yourself, and frankly, who's to say you only have one? You could have as many as you like, and not very many people have interacted with kind of the pre-crypto structures that allow this to happen. I mentioned DBA names, but there are a lot of authors who publish pseudonymously. And they have a name that's on their books from like a publishing house or whatever, but their actual name is something else. And their publishers might need to know. The IRS certainly needs to know, right? But the public doesn't really need to know. And sometimes, it's not even clear who the publishers needs to know, right? These structures of pseudonymity that crypto enables, right? It's instead of being W-2'd with direct deposit to a bank account that has your real name and real address on it. You can send to an Eth wallet. You can just be like, hey, this is the work that we want done. This is how much we think it's worth. Here's the contract. Once it's delivered, the smart contract executes, and then you get the Ethereum. It opens up a different way of working, a different style of working. Management's a little bit different. You're not really, it's not a question of following up with someone to see if something's done. It's like, if it's done, it's done. And they know it because they haven't gotten paid. It's a totally different ball game, and it'll be weird at first. It'll be really weird at first to be like, wow, am I really going to work pseudonymously, or I'm not even going to know the people that I work with. If you really want, you can always self-dox. If you really trust someone, you can always self-dox. It's a very intimate thing, by the way. When two pseudonyms, mutually face dox and mutually name dox, you realize suddenly how private this information really is. You can always do that, right? But similar to I don't know if you've ever, and I'm very ashamed of this. I've been a part of video game clans in my day, where we have gamer tags and we play. We play video games. I confess, I was once a gamer. You can do a lot of collaborative stuff with strangers. It's weird actually for them to kind of know your name. It'd be very weird. You'd prefer actually for them to know you by a handle. Nothing against them, but why? And this stuff, to have totally non-custodial crypto payments, to have the ability to spend your crypto or to spend against your crypto, just to kind of collateralize the crypto that you have and be able to take loans out, where you're not dealing with a financial institution anymore. You are your own financial institution. You can do this within the bounds of some KYC for traditional finance rules. We respect the government. We don't try and cheat the government. Where we need to, we will obey KYC. Um, it feels really weird at first, but it's like it gets less weird after that. So like, there's a guy in Wyoming who knows my real name and knows that I am Indian Bronson, and he's my registered agent in Wyoming, and like, that's his job. His job is to be a good keeper of secrets. So it's like, whatever, right?
So is that what you did so you have like a Wyoming DAO for Indian
Yeah.
Bronson or what?
Yeah, and FinCEN, this is actually pretty recent. So like, the whole anonymous shell company thing that was recently made illegal. You can't do that in the U.S. anymore. Like, there has to be like a legal person, associated with something. Yeah. Can the FBI find out who I am if they ask the IRS, hey, who is this guy? Yeah. The U.S. government has more power than I do. Turns out, right? But
Sure.
like, but that's kind of okay, right? Like, I'm not planning, maybe I am, but not really. No, I'm not overthrowing the U.S. government with things that I'm doing. I'm probably not on too many watch lists, right? Like,
okay, so I'm kind of interested in the logistics of this. So help us unpack a little bit about the decision calculus. Why was that the best vehicle for you to file yourself as a DAO in Wyoming? And then what other kind of concrete stuff can you share about like how you use that to like build out your position in the economy? I'm just curious about this.
Yeah. So the reason I picked the Wyoming DAO is because Wyoming has done something very interesting where, like, your DAO can govern itself entirely through the contracts that it's written up with. You can operate it however, but for legal purposes, if there's ever a dispute that starts involving legacy legal structures, right? If people ever get, the old world's paper and pen legal structures out to do battle with you, you can just default to Wyoming LLC law. And suddenly, you have this large, well understood arsenal of case law and, lots of attorneys and things like that. You have suddenly protections with a government entity that many governments recognize. Every other state recognizes Wyoming. The U.S. federal government recognizes Wyoming, and lots of governments recognize the U.S. federal government. So I picked Wyoming for that reason, because even if you want to decentralize, and I do have theses about decentralization from the state, including the United States. You kind of always have to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, right? If there's another power that has power over you, just don't fuck with that, right? Like,
and so what are the advantages you get from doing the Wyoming DAO LLC versus just a normal LLC?
Well, so like, my payment can be entirely through smart contracts, right? So like, instead of being an LLC organization where it's like, there's a regular vendor PO or something, it can be like, here's my Ethereum address, and different deliverables are the billables, and as I execute on what I need to execute on, right, the Ethereum just comes in. Right. And
so that's your Ethereum address, like, is in the paperwork in Wyoming, like in an office somewhere?
Yes. So they actually have to, they have a copy on file. It's like, this is how, it's like, this is the entity, this is the DAO LLC. And it's like, it's recognized by the state. It's like, yeah, this is real. This is how this guy does business. And
do they also have your social security number and stuff like that, or no?
So the registered agent knows everything about me.
No one else can find it anywhere.
A government can, I mean, like, legally, the IRS knows that. The FBI. So there's this organization, FinCEN. They can find it out.
Sure, it's not like perfect, but most people can't find it.
Yeah. Regular man on the street, angry journalist.
Gotcha.
They can't find out. So you're protected in that sense.
Okay, fascinating. So Swype is basically a company building out this pseudonymous layer, and Swype wants to make it easier for pseudonymous people such as yourself whose main identifier is an Ethereum address to basically get hired by normal companies, get paid just as you would by a normal company. Swype wants to make that easier and build out that side of things. Could you tell us a little bit more about Swype's larger vision and why you believe in this company in particular, like how the business model works and why you think this is going to work?
Yeah, so this kind of it's not like a first order thing, but it's like a side effect almost. It blossoms out of the ability to pay anyone and pay anywhere in crypto, right? So like, if you get if you get like an HSBC Select account or something, right? Like even if you're a U.S. citizen and even if you're paid in dollars, you can be paid in euros, right? Like you can do the conversion yourself. You can just keep all of your money in euros. You can get a bank card that's in euros. And you can find yourself in the same position as someone who, if they're European and they're on holiday in the US, right? Like their whole economic life is enumerated in the euro. Excuse me. When they go and like buy coffee somewhere, the merchants just sees that they got dollars, right? It's not like there's a thing, AMC theaters are in the news for accepting Bitcoin or whatever, right? Even if a merchant isn't set up to accept euros, when this European person swipes their bank card, they get dollars anyway, right? Like they didn't have to do anything extra. We are building that capability for crypto. And so, not everyone will want to directly do that. We get some angry Bitcoin maxis who are like, "Why would I ever spend Bitcoin? It's worth so much U.S. government money." And I have to wonder, what they think their money is, if not the crypto. But we'll enable people to actually collateralize and spend against their crypto in a stable coin if they would like. If you own something that's appreciating in value, right? Like your cost of capital should go down. To be able to live your entire life in crypto, to exit the U.S. dollar, in some ways, this is kind of like the ultimate rebellion against the state. It's like I'm just not gonna hold, any U.S. dollars, and that's my personal plan, right? Like, I will obey tax laws. I'll keep some petty cash for, my ivermectin guy and my barber. They expect dollar bills, but I don't really feel like I will have a need anymore to hold any U.S. dollars. I can be like that expat who, even though they're a U.S. citizen, is now entirely enumerated in euros. I can have the internet's currency. I can have multi-currency crypto support, and I can just keep living my life. Combined with pseudonymity, combined with all of these structures that crypto is building that just don't really have a good UI experience, that don't really have, the protocols for how you deal with pseudonymous ICs and all of this stuff aren't really fleshed out anywhere. We're going to give that to people. And once people see how easy it is to use, I think most people will start to opt for them. Even if they aren't like, tech bro, futurist, decentralization brained or whatever, right? It'll just be easier to use. It'll be better to use.
Gotcha. So basically, Swype is going to make it possible for you to get a job, get paid totally pseudonymously, get paid in crypto, but you can still buy things that require US dollars. It'll kind of just do that exchange for you at point of purchase. So you're only ever touching and using crypto, but if people need USD, they'll exchange it out and make that possible.
You never need to touch fiat ever again.
But you can still pay people in fiat if that's what they need.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. It's like,
Right.
Imagine the most normie on the planet. This person, if you said something like, Genesis block, they'd be like, what's that? Is it like a Sega Genesis? They have no relationship to this stuff at all. We want something that like it's not even like a dunk. It's like, if you're just not familiar with information, you're not familiar with information, right? Like, we want that person to be able to use crypto. we want the experience to be so good that like they opt for Swype
Totally.
over Bank of America.
I
Right?
noticed on the website there's a little product demo that has Apple Pay on it. Is that just like a teaser, or is that like in the works, or what?
Today, if you're on Swype, and if you'd like to get on, I'll onboard you myself. You can use it anywhere Apple Pay is accepted. This is true today.
Okay, so
and
it's already working. It's
yep.
already you can already be up and running with this, and you can use it through Apple Pay to. You can hold all your money.
That is correct.
You hold all your money in crypto, and you pay people in USD, just like when you put your phone up to the register at the grocery store and pay in Apple Pay.
Yep.
Okay, fascinating.
Exactly. We're also coming out with physical cards. I do pay for things on my phone. I feel like a dweeb when I pay for things on my phone. I'm just, it's true, right? I'm a physical card guy. I will always be a physical card guy. My parents are physical card people. It matters. It matters for just ease of use. There are a lot of POS systems that are it's just better to swipe a card, to insert a chip or whatever. And so we're also going to have, we're very excited about it. We're also going to have a very premium, very nice physical card for you to use as well.
Okay, fascinating. And so this is already up and running. Give us some sense of, are you getting traction? Where along in the journey are you guys? And just give us some sense of how things are going.
Yeah. So, we have strong user transaction volume. We've got quite the wait list. We're onboarding people as quickly as we can. It's, we'd like to get everyone on immediately. We are heads down right now, focused on making sure that, the service is as scalable, as robust as it can possibly be before we put too many people on it. And we're making sure that we have the features that, both our whale users and casual users, want from an app, from a service, right? It has to be easy to use. So we published a note recently on our Substack where it's like, the UI and UX of crypto is it's light years behind what the technology enables. And that is why, crypto hasn't just taken over every business yet, is that it's still not as usable as TradFi, even though TradFi has all of these disadvantages. And so we are laser focused on ironing those out, but we expect to be raising, sometime around the end of October. And, we think people are going to love what we have.
Okay, fantastic. And so for people out there listening who maybe are pseudonymous, I certainly have a lot of people in my audience who, rock a totally pseudonymous avatar for their social media or Substack or what have you. For them to get on Swype, do they need to go through the Wyoming DAO filing process, or are there other easier ways to kind of maintain pseudonymity and start using Swype for your transactions?
Yeah, so you don't need to do what I did. Start using Swype for transactions. You can use Swype as a wallet, as a Bitcoin wallet, as an Ethereum wallet today, right? And it is your wallet, right? You have your keys. You can transact with it. I chose to go that route, and I think that route will, it's a lot easier than people think. It's a lot less painless than people think. We'll make it easier. We'll show people how to do it. Documentation that exists today, right now, if you Google how to form a Wyoming DAO LLC or whatever, right? Like, there's like a legislature page from the Wyoming state government that comes up, and it's like, it's a PDF that opens up. It's a bad scene, right? We're going to make that easier for everyone. And it's not like that's the only path, but it'll be a path. But right now, if you want to get on Swype and just use it as a wallet, as a Bitcoin and as an Ethereum wallet, you can do that. And it's pretty quick. Shoot me a message.
And you can just You can give it like a fake name or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's a wallet, right? You don't even need to give it a name.
Oh, okay, I wasn't sure when you set up the app. Maybe it asks. I guess it doesn't ask you for that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, it's a Bitcoin wallet. It's an Ethereum wallet.
Gotcha.
Yep, you can.
And are those the only
like.
Are those the only current cryptocurrencies, or others as well?
Yep, we just added Ethereum support, and we're going to be working on. We intend to be multi-currency. Sorry to the Bitcoin maxis. We like Ethereum. We like Solana. I own some Miami City coin. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And if people want that custom personalized Indian Bronson onboarding, where should they contact you?
Yes. So the best way to get in touch with us, if you want the custom onboarding, is at Swype. Get and then SWYPE at Twitter. But you can also, you can just at me. You can get in my mentions. Indian Bronson on Twitter. The I is actually a lowercase L. Shamefully, I am violating the Twitter TOS. I'm a ban evader. But if you search for Indian Bronson, it's pretty easy to find me. And we'd love to get you up and running.
Okay, awesome. And before I let you go, I just want to know a little bit more about any other kind of interesting projects right now that you find notable, or if there are any kind of interesting thinkers or badasses out there who you think are underrated, you want to give a shout out to or have me look into. I know you're interested in Urbit, for instance. I think you're active on Urbit, and I've seen you publicly kind of post about Urbit. What's your take on Urbit? Are you bullish on Urbit? And if so, why?
Super, super bullish on Urbit. You can also find me on Urbit at, Tiplin Tarek, Tarryc. If you're on Urbit, you know how to find me. If you're not on Urbit, just spin up a comment. Just Google Urbit comment, get on, check it out. It's good stuff.
I'll put all these things in the show notes for people. There'll be links in the show notes for people to check these things out.
Yeah, I highly encourage it because, one of the things that you need to have when you have people that want to buy a service and people that want to sell a service, for instance, maybe working pseudonymously at a company, they need a marketplace. They need a discursive space where they can talk about things, where things can be advertised, where people can, show their stuff, and even outside of that, if you have your Gmail account taken away from you, if you have your Facebook account taken away from you, if you have your Instagram and your Twitter and all of this taken away from you, you suddenly sever the connections, the social connections that you have with a lot of people. There's a phrase that a lot of my fellow Twitter anons use when they reincarnate, for the 20th time or whatever. Help me find my friends, and it's this very plaintive. It's like it's tongue in cheek, but it's also it's sad in a way, and. People think of these relationships as maybe parasocial, maybe they're fake. Leibniz, Clark, Samuel Clark, Pascal, correspondence between peers is very Lindy. It's deeply Lindy. It's actually for a lot of human history, physical travel and just being like, oh yeah, sure, I'll go to Vienna. Like that wasn't so easy, at every point in human history. But letters, this was actually a lot easier. And corresponding, with people you find interesting, people you admire through written work. And there's a long storied history of doing that. And, to lose all of those connections just because, some moderator or some automated process was like, you used too many naughty ideas in a sentence, turn it off. It's really terrible, right? You want to be able to have, the ability to talk and engage with ideas fearlessly. And, obviously, just shitpost to the max. I mean, just, the memes. The memes that are available on Urbit are available nowhere else. I can't even share them. You get a completely different experience when you really have, this ability to communicate with people freely, and Urbit enables that in a way that just doesn't exist anywhere else. So I'm hugely bullish on Urbit. I will bug people about it. I've gotten most of my friends to at least spin up a comment. And I would encourage everyone who hasn't, just just do it. Like the docs don't take that long to read through. You don't need to be a Linux administrator to do it. It's really simple. It's a little bit simpler if you have a Mac, but it's fun. Like once you're on it and you're looking around, and if you can't find anything, just ping me at Tiplanteric. I'll show you fun communities. Like once you're on it, you'll kind of get it. Particularly if you're part of this group of millennials who remember IRC or AOL or things like that. Like if you remember those days of the internet before it became this like terrible walled garden experience, Urbit will feel very familiar to you.
Right on. Right on. Yeah, you told me the other day that you said something that kind of stuck with me, which was that Urbit is a computer that you and your grandkids could all use. Like there's a kind of long-term quality to truly decentralized technologies. They just have this possibility of lasting forever, potentially, in a way that other technologies just will never have a hope of that.
Yeah, the blockchain is this. I mean, in one sense, it's this weird newfangled technology. Like, what do you mean everything's on the ledger forever, right? It's crazy, but so I come from not an ancient, but a kind of an older Indian family, and so we have a family tree, and our ancestors are documented in all of this. Some of your Chinese listeners. I believe it's called the Zupu. I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, but it's it's a family lineal document, and you sort of trace out who your ancestors are and who they married and what children they had, and these things are kept in a chain, and it's actually very important. You venerate these people. A lot of the things that kind of make modern life so disposable is that we don't have a sense of the ancient. We don't really preserve things for very long. We boot them up, we toss them out. Your great-great-grandchildren can use your Urbit instance. It can be like my great-great-grandfather's Urbit. The documents that he wrote, you can have forever. I have some letters from my great grandfather that I read them, and they're I mean they're mundane things, right? Like one of them he's asking a friend to borrow money for like an apartment that he wants to rent. It's just but it was my great grandfather, right? And so I can read how he thought about the world, right? If that physical paper is ever destroyed, I have pictures of it, but still, right? It's game over. Not that I want my grandchildren reading my DMs or something, but to be able to persist things longer than oneself. It's really beautiful. And
no, it is. It is something people don't take seriously enough because we've so normalized the current culture of these computing machines made by centralized corporations, in that it's like there's probably stuff on my previous MacBook Air that is actually valuable to me that I really would like to keep, that I'm going to lose forever because for some reason it just didn't make it in the migration process as I'm like copying files over to my new laptop, and it's like that. When you think about it, that's actually really totally idiotic. There's like absolutely no good reason why data on like one of my computers at one part of my life could ever like fail to make it over to the next computer. That's totally idiotic. There's no good reason for that, except for the contingent intricacies of like of the actual production processes that punctuate our different like consumer devices.
Yeah, like a chip manufacturer screwing up your drive or whatever, right? Like that should not be should not be what your memories rest on. And there are things that I actually only store in one place. There's only one place that my private keys are. And it's in my heart, right? But well, the mnemonic is at least. But there are things that I don't persist for a reason. I want them to disappear. They exist in a particular time and place, and that's that. Cryptography gives you that too, because once you lock something away cryptographically, like it is locked away. So you get this ability to you kind of reclaim this ability to have both a deep human attachment to persistence, and also this ability to just cast something out completely. And that's really powerful. It's really powerful, and it's deeply appealing to me. So TLDR, boot up a Comet, get on Urbit, check it out.
And maybe someday soon there'll be an integration between Swype and Urbit. So your totally pseudonymous job that's paid in crypto will also be taking place on Urbit, perhaps.
Slack is a centralized service.
Dude,
right
totally,
now,
right?
now.
Discord, come on. Discord, how's Discord going to be like the frontier of Web3? No fucking way.
Yeah,
Right?
and if you've ever been in an Urbit chat, versus say a Discord group, I mean the quality of participants is it's not even a comparison.
Right. Well, I want to thank you for your time today. It was a pleasure getting to know you, and I will put links to all of your stuff in the show notes. Your Substack, which I highly recommend. People can contact you on Twitter if people want to learn more about Swype. They can get in touch with you, and like you said, that's very nice of you. You'll personally onboard people. So all the links we talked about will be in the show notes. People can pursue things there. And any parting words or anything we didn't cover that you really wanted to get out there?
No, I think that's everything. But don't be a stranger. Get in the mentions on Twitter. I will. You can bother me all you want. I'll be there.
All right, awesome. Good to know you, Indian. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it, and we'll stay in touch. Keep us posted on Swype and everything you're up to, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thanks very much. I appreciate that.
Hey, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. You made it all the way to the very end, so you must really like the show. In that case, I would be super grateful if you'd be so kind to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. All you have to do is go to otherlife.co/review. That's otherlife.co/review. And it'll send you an Apple Podcast. Just leave a review. You can be honest. Tell me what you really think. I'd really appreciate it because it'll help other people find the show, and I'm really trying to grow out the podcast. So thanks for listening, and thank you for leaving a review. I really appreciate it.